quick. JJ began her career in corporate management working for IBM and McKinsey. Soon after, she decided a career change may be inevitable as 3 of her 4 parents in the immediate family were diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. And so she became really the family caregiver for 16 years.
Yep.
So this, she has practiced what she preached, to say the least. She's currently the CEO of the Jordan Consulting Group. She speaks, teaches, and consults on dementia. She gave over 125 of these educational events last year. So she is hard at work making sure we have the information that we need. She's also a volunteer and community chair for the Dementia Friendly Denver. She's been a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association for the last 19 years. She recently served a 6-year term on the board of directors and currently serves as a community educator and as their public policy ambassador to Capitol Hill. So we have got all the brain power we can use in the room here today. Ask great questions. JJ, would you prefer questions
at the end.
We go or at the end?
At the end would be great if
so
everybody...
write our questions down so we don't forget. We gave some blue sheets, handed blue sheets out to you. Those will help both give us feedback and give you an opportunity to get further questions answered after. So without further ado, JJ,
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. And thanks to my wonderful friends at ANI. So you guys are in very good hands, and thank you so much for having me today. As you can see, this is an absolutely free program that we do from Dementia Friendly Denver. Don't get hung up on the Denver part. I was in Castle Rock last week. I'll be in Boulder later this week. So we kind of take care of things up and down the Front Range. You'll see the Alzheimer's Association logo on these slides as well. They are a national partner for Dementia Friendly America. That program was announced in 2015 at the White House Conference on Aging. And the whole mission of Dementia Friendly America is to make communities more dementia friendly by teaching us how we interact and communicate better with people with dementia. To reduce the stigma about the entire subject and to improve quality of life for those people who are living with this. And there are a lot of us at this point in time, a lot of families. So that's kind of what we're all about. We call this session Dementia 101, Reducing Your Risk. And that's because before we part ways in our hour, and I promise to leave time at the end so you can pepper me with questions, we're going to talk about the 12 real things that every single one of you can do to reduce your risk or delay your onset, should that be your destiny. So we'll talk about that and a lot of basics and things like that in between. I just will say that if you wonder why this is what I'm doing with my senior years, you heard the story about 3 of our parents. And this is my husband, by the way, who's sitting over there because he drove me over here today with my back. I wasn't going to be driving. But at any rate, 3 of our 4 parents, they lived for 16, 14, and 11 years with the disease. And we lost our last lovey, as we collectively called them, LOVIEs, about 5 years ago. That was my sweet Elsie Jordan. My mother-in-law was the most perfect person I've ever met on the planet so far. So you're going to hear some stories from our family today that I think will be pertinent to what you all are hoping to learn today. Listen, it's not lost on me that this is a very serious, intense subject. Some people may even say it's intimidating, frightening. And so I always like to start where other people would probably wrap up, and that's by talking about the hope and optimism around this subject. So I've been in this field for almost 20 years now, and I can tell you, I usually say as I stand before you today, as I sit before you today, that I have never been more optimistic than I am right now, that the answer is around the corner, on the horizon. We are this close, ladies and gentlemen. So I want you guys to remember that as we discuss a lot of very serious topics today, because I'm going to tell it like it is, but I want you to know that it's never been more promising than right now. Here's a chair up here if you'd like a softer seat or want to be in the action up here. Yeah, come on up. Come on up. I'm sitting today because I'm having a little back problem, but forgive me. Oh, there's only one chair, so they might want to sit together back there. Okay. Anyway, so the reason for my optimism is that we have 66 clinical trials going on in phase 3 right now. That's more than ever before. And one of those clinical trials is right here at the Anschutz Rocky Mountain Alzheimer's Research Center in our backyard. So I think we have about 13 months to go on that trial. It's been very promising so far. These are all blind trials, so you never get too much of a peek ahead of time, but I hear it's going well. So anyway, we better get this fixed for a couple of reasons. I can personally speak to the heartache around this whole subject, as many of you probably in the room can as well. But aside from that, there's a financial price tag to this thing that will blow you away. We are spending $290 billion, that's with a B, dollars every year taking care of people with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. 187 billion of that is through the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, and the rest of it comes out of the pockets of families like ours. So we need to get it fixed, obviously, because we're heading for $1.2 trillion in annual care by the middle of the century if we don't. We are currently spending $2.3 billion on research through Dr. Francis Collins and his gang at the NIH. I pay visits to them regularly when I'm in DC doing my thing. And we just asked Congress for $350 more about 2 months ago and got it. So it's in the appropriations bill right now. Hopefully that'll be passed and we'll be up pushing $3 billion a year. Dr. Collins tells me that it is not a matter of science, it's just a matter of more money for more trials, thinking outside the box. So when the breakthrough occurs, I'm throwing a party for the whole world, so you'll all be invited, and watch for your invitations, okay? And if it's right here at Anschutz, why, the party shall be even more lavish, all right? Okay, you guys, we're gonna explore some facts today. In a room this size, with this many people participating, there are some of you who are just curious, and that's fine. There's some who may be concerned about a loved one, and then no doubt there's somebody in the room that's already committed from the eyebrows on, as I like to say. So we'll have something for everybody, and we're just going to hold the questions to the end because I might answer it while we go through, but we'll leave plenty of time. I think a great place to start, everybody, is with typical age-related cognitive change. The things you see on the screen are the things that are normal as we get a little bit older. So I'll let you read those sort of for yourself there. The big takeaway on this slide is down at the bottom, and that is that dementia is not normal aging. Ever, period, end of story. People will challenge me and say, yes, but my mother is 95. Isn't it normal for 95? And the answer is still no. Common at 95, more common for sure, but never normal aging. And that's why it's so important for all of us to understand what this is all about. Before we dive into the various types of dementia, I want to talk about some reversible conditions that can mimic dementia, but are not dementia. The first one being some emotional disorders like PTSD, clinical depression, and those sorts of things. Then there's metabolic stuff like hypothyroidism can certainly cause people to be in a delirious state or confused or detached. Brain tumors make the list. This is interesting. I have 7 acquaintances who found a brain tumor because of cognitive decline. 5 of them were benign. They were all operable. I do believe these people are going to live as long as I will, but it's a good thing they found out about it, right? Then there's dehydration. It's very difficult for us to get our older adults in an arid climate like this to drink enough water, which can cause a kind of a delusionary state. And then there's sensory loss. You guys, that's just hearing and sight issues decline that happens to us as we get older. Vitamin deficiencies can also mimic dementia. B12 is the main culprit here. If you have too much B12, that's not good either, but a severe deficiency will cause people to be in a somewhat delirious state. So doctors will always look for that first. And then infections like urinary tract infections, ladies, we get them most often, but gentlemen, you get them occasionally too. And they can really set us into a confused tailspin. And then I don't need to tell this very esteemed group that we live in a very drug and alcohol infested society. Lots of that going on, which can confuse brains. And sometimes it's medical interactions with medicines, and people have more than one doctor and they're all prescribing different stuff. And when we get that straightened out, baseline cognition returns. Just a quick 30 seconds on MCI. Mild cognitive impairment is a real thing, everyone. You can actually get a diagnosis of MCI from a physician. It is severe enough to show up on a cognitive test. It is not severe enough to slow you down much in your activities of daily living. I say that it puts you on the watch list, particularly for Alzheimer's disease. So you want to report any changes to your physician immediately, and you're going to want to double down on the 12 things that you can do to reduce your risk or delay your onset. Let's talk about dementia. The number one question that I'm asked as I'm out doing this talk probably 5 to 6 times a week is, what's the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? And the easiest way to explain it is that everyone with Alzheimer's disease has dementia. Not everyone with dementia has Alzheimer's disease. So we're going to talk through the most common types, which I've listed here on this page. And you can see that I've depicted it under a purple umbrella. That's because it's an umbrella word like the word cancer. Many kinds of cancer. There are over 100 types of dementia altogether. And we're just going to talk about the most common ones today. So here we go. We talk about Alzheimer's disease first and foremost, not just because it begins with an A, but that's convenient, because it is by far the most common type of dementia, accounting for about 70% of all cases. Now, I have to clear that up a little bit for you. I'm a nerd, I'll tell you that right now, and I got so excited about 3 months ago because a completely brand new type of dementia was discovered. It's called LATE, that stands for Limbic Predominant Age-Related TDP-43 Encephalopathy. I think I deserve just a tiny round of applause for getting that out. I've done my brain game for today, right, you guys? And that affects people well over 80. So even if you say, wow, the people over 80 that are just newly diagnosed and we thought they might have had Alzheimer's and they have LATE instead, even if you take that down, we're talking about 65% of the cases. So by far the most common. Little history lesson, okay with everybody for today? Alzheimer's disease was discovered in 1906 by a German doctor, Dr. Alois Alzheimer. He was presented with a 51-year-old female at his clinic. We refer to her respectfully just as Frau Auguste D. Her husband brought her to the clinic demonstrating irrational behavior, and you know what happened to you back then? Off to Bellevue for you, right? He wasn't buying it, so he took her into his care at the clinic. 3 years later, at her passing, performed the first autopsy of the disease that we still know today as Alzheimer's. Now, as many times a week as I tell this story, and what many of you may be thinking right now is 1906, why are we still talking about this, right? It speaks to the complexity of the brain. It speaks to the complexity of Alzheimer's disease in particular. But it was the good news is it was only about 1980 when actually closer to 90, I think 1989 or 90, when the medical and scientific community realized that younger onset Alzheimer's, anyone diagnosed under the age of 65, only 3% of all the cases, thank goodness, and regular onset over 65 was all the same thing. So then they were like, wow, we better get after this and start studying this to find a cure because we're going to have tens of millions of people with this disease, which is exactly what is happening. There is not a country on the planet, by the way, without Alzheimer's disease. This is a worldwide health issue. I want you to know that Alzheimer's disease is a brain disease. It is not a mental illness. Not that there should be any stigma about that either, but that's a different subject for a different expert on a different day. This is just like a disease just like cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. It's progressive. The trajectory of Alzheimer's disease is like this, a gradual arc decline. Vascular dementia, which we'll talk about in a minute, is more like stair steps, deeper dives, longer plateaus. Currently, there's no cure, as I said before, but boy, are we working on it. We're so close. And we know that it can live dormantly in our bodies for 20 plus years before it manifests into full-blown dementia. So as a senior, as I sit before you today, if I have Alzheimer's disease, I have Alzheimer's disease, no doubt. I have not chosen to be tested to find out definitively, but we're going to talk about diagnosing in a little bit. Plaques and tangles are the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. The plaques are beta amyloid and the tangles are tau, T-A-U. These are brain proteins, not regular protein, brain proteins that each one of us has in our brain right now. As we sit here, we need it to live. When it builds up to excess, that's when the problems begin with cognition. And so we're trying to figure out how these two particular proteins fit into the picture. We're beginning to think that beta amyloid is probably more of an effect versus a cause. And the tau is the tangle or tangles inside the neuron that are really strangling the neuron from inside out. Over 5.8 million Americans that we know of have Alzheimer's disease. That is highly, highly underreported. We passed a piece of legislation the Wednesday before Christmas last year that caused the CDC to get involved in this. And so by this time next year, if I come out to do an update for you good people, we'll know a better number of how many people are really affected. 6th leading cause of death in the US, and someone's developing every 65 seconds. I said there were no treatments, and I meant it, you guys, but we do have some symptomatic drug therapies. We're not giving medical advice today to all of you, but I want you to know enough about these things that you can have an intelligent conversation with a physician. So these are things that are diagnosed, that are prescribed to people typically with Alzheimer's disease in the mild to moderate stages. The first class are cholinesterase inhibitors. You know it from TV probably as Aricept, Razodine, and Exelon. The second class are glutamate modulators. That's Namenda. And then some genius came up with a combo drug, so people only have to take one pill instead of one of each of those classes, and that's called Namsaric. And again, may or may not work for your people. We just want you to know about it. These are for Alzheimer's, by the way, these symptom relievers, and they don't stop the disease. It's marching on in the background. It's not slowing it down. It's just helping with some symptoms for some people, in some cases, for some period of time. So it's not a really big deal, you guys, but we had very good luck with 2 of our 3 levies on this. I think it bought us just a little bit more bright time, if you know what I mean. Stages of Alzheimer's, 3 basically, early, middle, late, also known as mild, moderate, and severe. Notice where driving is up there, ladies and gentlemen. It's in the first class. So listen, don't whack your neighbor. That would be rude, but I know we're kind of squeezed in here today, but stretch your arms out like this if you can. This actually feels good on my back right now. Stare straight ahead and wiggle your fingers and bring them in until you can see them. This is your peripheral vision, everybody, okay? Now go like this. This is what our people are seeing, sometimes even in the very earliest stages of dementia. Certainly past middle stage. The baby stroller is coming across the crosswalk from the side, so that's why driving is where it is on this chart. Only a professional should make the call as to whether someone with any type of dementia, diagnosed or not, is safe to drive. We can't trust ourselves as family care partners, because then that adds chauffeur to our many lists of things we have to do. So we can't always be real objective. Notice where managing your money is, particularly because of where we are today with the great people here at A&I. I could tell you stories you would not believe about people who had access to asset accounts far beyond when they should have, and we're not talking about just adding an extra 0 to the light bill and paying $850 instead of $85. We're talking about vast sums of money. So very important to get a handle on that early with somebody with dementia. Middle stage, more difficulty with everything, you guys. Language skills, losing things, grooming, etc. And then eventually, if something else kind of doesn't get you first, I always say this will turn out to be a 24/7 experience, caregiving experience for the whole family. Would this be a good time to tell you that I've never been more optimistic than I am right now? I'm looking at your very serious faces. So we're going to get it fixed, everybody. It's going to be a big day for me. I'm going to do my senior version of a cartwheel when that happens. It's not going to be pretty, but it'll be genuine. All right. Vascular dementia is number 2 on the hit parade. About 10% of all the cases, that's when you've had strokes, small or large, interfering with the blood flow to the brain. And the location and size and number of those, where all of that determines how much damage has been done and will be done, obviously. Then there's dementia with Lewy bodies. Those are microscopic abnormal brain proteins. Again, this is part of the Parkinson's family, so hallucinations are more of a hallmark in this case versus memory loss. And then there is Parkinson's-related dementia. It's not unusual for people to develop full-blown dementia in the later stages of Parkinson's disease, and it's very similar to Alzheimer's and Lewy body kind of symptoms. And then there is frontotemporal dementia. My personal experience with this is that it is the most difficult kind for caregivers, real challenge. There's more aggressive behavior in this kind of case. It hits people at a younger age. The span of living with the disease is much shorter than it is with Alzheimer's, which right now the average is about a decade, maybe 10 to 11 years right now. And so it's not unusual for there to be mixed things going on. 2 of our 3 levies had vascular dementia on top of their Alzheimer's disease that had been diagnosed. And that's because as they left us in their early 90s, and so as they got older, they were having some cardio experiences as well. Here's how our noggins work. Please do let me know if I'm impressing you with my medical jargon, okay? All right, but anyway, we have about 100 billion nerve cells in our brains, and I've depicted that with the little picture you'll see of the forest up here. I never bring a picture of the real human brain because it's quite gnarly, and these are lunch and learns, so it'll really put you right off your salad, you know what I mean? So, but this is really what it looks like, and the synapses are firing all the time, communicating between the neurons, and that is causing our memories, our thoughts, our feelings, everything about us as humans. In the early stages of all types of dementia, there's just impairment. Our people will have what we call blue sky days. Dad recited the preamble to the Constitution in early middle stage Alzheimer's on the way to the doctor one day, and then an hour later he didn't know what a sweater was, much less where his sweater was. It really wreaks havoc with those of us who are family care partners, because we question, are we overreacting? Is our care plan the right one? And of course it probably is, but sometimes everything just clears a little bit. And then in the late stages, obviously, the neurons are actually destroyed. My sweet Elsie Jordan, Tim's mother, my mother-in-law, her neurologist is now my neurologist, and he believes that her brain was slightly larger than my fist at the end of 16 years with Alzheimer's disease. That's how much shrinkage there was. And I'll just tell you the story. I hope you don't mind, but I know I got an I love you on that last day together. She hadn't spoken for about 5 years, but the cadence was there. It was, and that was my reward for our 16 years together. I miss her every day. Okay, major risk factors. Okay, everybody, it's age. Not a doggone thing we can do about it, right? And I don't know about some of you in the room today, but I'm way over apologizing for how old I am. I just had my 67th birthday, and I'm extremely delighted about it. I can't wait to get on with life, but I would really like to get on with life without dementia. Are you with me? All right, that's why we're working on this. Ladies, hate to tell you, but we are at the epicenter of the whole thing. 2/3 of all Alzheimer's patients are in fact female. Now part of that is because we live longer, right? You guys are sharp. But we know there's more to it than that. I was just in a Women in Alzheimer's seminar. We're looking at everything hormonal. We're certainly looking at menopause, because of sleep interruption. Good solid sleep is when the buildup of amyloid beta in tau normally happens. I think I didn't tell you that. But so if it dissolves during good natural sleep and we're having sleep issues during menopause, that certainly makes sense to me. When we have a definitive reason about why, I'm sure Lester Holt will be telling us all about it on the nightly news. And gentlemen, I hate to break it to you all, but females, absolutely, this is just a fact, have better what we call superior verbal memory. That means that we remember something you told us better than males do. But before we start gloating, ladies, let me just, yes, I know, a little gloat is always fun.
We just make you think.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right, sir. I think that could be true. But before we gloat too much, we believe that that very thing that I just mentioned also works against us and makes us more vulnerable for a buildup of tau in our brains. So it's not all exactly good news. But more about that, I'm sure, later in the future, too. 2/3 of all caregivers for people with any kind of dementia are female. You might not know that there's a direct correlation with Down syndrome. Everyone with Down syndrome will have the pathology of Alzheimer's disease by around age 40. Those people are now living into their 60s. And the good news is, again, in science, there's always good news. Even when there's bad news, there's good news. You just have to look for it. These people are wonderful cohorts in clinical trials, and I believe when we get this all fixed, that problem may be solved as well. Family history is the next, number 2 most common question that I'm asked. Is this hereditary? The answer is yes, to some extent. So everybody in the room today has about a 10% chance of developing Alzheimer's past the age of 65. For people like, I have one parent, Tim has 2 parents, we have a 20 to 25% chance. Hey, we'll take the 75% chance that we're not going to get it any day, and you can bet that the Jordans are doubling down on the 12 things we can do to reduce our risk. There are genes involved, many, many kinds of genes. Another 24 were discovered about 2 months ago. But the 2 we talk about, one is deterministic. There are about 200 families on the planet where everybody in the family will have Alzheimer's by 40 or 50. Pretty sensational, but very rare. And then the other one is a gene called APOE4. We could all tootle out from here and go get genetic testing done. Heck, you could probably do it in a kit nowadays, right? And find out if we have 1 or 2 copies. Nobody is recommending that you go do that, because if you do have 1 or 2 copies, doesn't guarantee you're going to get Alzheimer's disease. If you have 0 copies, you're not totally off the hook. But what a great indicator it is for science to find out in particularly tough cases. Okay, I'm here to spend the next 2 or 3, 4 minutes convincing you why you want to know about this. The number one problem we have is that nobody wants to talk about this. And they certainly don't want to go find out about it. You already said there's no cure. Why would I want to go? It's just going to upset everybody in the family. Wrong, 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 and wrong. And I'm here to convince you of that. Only 50% of those people with dementia get a formal diagnosis, and we have to change that. But here's the real kicker. Of that 50%, where a physician has made the call, only 50% are being told by the doctors. This is exactly where cancer was back in the 1960s. You guys, some of you may remember that. So we have to bring all this out of the shadow. The number one reason that you want to know is because it might not be Alzheimer's or dementia after all. Remember the B12? Ta-da! Remember the brain tumor? Uh-oh. You got to go find out what's going on if you're suffering from cognitive decline. And then the next reason is that if this is your destiny, you have a lot of work to do. And financial planning is at the top of that list. So the good people that are with you every day for this subject will be with you during this top journey as well. Lots of legal and financial matters. I always say that you got to get cleared up. I always say we don't give legal, medical, or financial advice at Dementia Friendly Denver because I meant to go to law school and med school, but I forgot. A little joke there. Anyway, oops. Well, thank you for laughing. Okay, so anyway, there's safety and transportation issues. We've already talked about that. And then I want to make sure I decide who has my proxy. I want to be able to tell people, oh, yes, you can. Oh, no, you can't. Don't even think about it with regard to my care. And moving on down the line, if I haven't convinced you yet, I have 3 more chances at it, you guys. The first one is, remember those drug therapies I talked about? They work better the earlier you start taking them. So early detection and diagnosis is extremely important to your loved ones. The second reason is that it helps people remain independent a little bit longer. And people will say, well, how's that possible? Diabetes is also very rampant in our society, right? If you have diabetes and memory loss, are you going to remember to take your diabetes medicine? Probably not. Or any other medicine that has been prescribed to you for your personal care. So that way a physician can assign you a med minder to make sure that you're taking everything to keep you in tip-top shape despite this situation. We believe that we could prevent 1/4 of all hospitalizations of people with any form of dementia by early detection and diagnosis. So that's our mission. And then if I haven't convinced you, I go one more shot at it, and Dr. Huntington Potter, who is the neurologist at Anschutz. He had to be a neurologist with a name like that, right? Anyway, he's a good buddy of mine, and he would never forgive me for not mentioning clinical trials. The earlier this is detected, the more clinical trials you're qualified for, and the standard of care is awesome. It's all free, not to mention, should it be the thing, you're going to get first dibs at it, no doubt. So, so that's a good reason to want to participate in that. By the way you do that is by going on to the Alzheimer's Association's website, alz.org. You type trial match, all one word, on the browser line, and you're not signing up for a clinical trial, so don't panic. You're just putting yourself or your loved one in the pool. It took about 1.5 years for me to get my first hit out of the pool, and now I'm in 6 clinical research studies as the well daughter of an Alzheimer's patient. And it makes me feel like I'm doing something for science there too. Okay, moving along, neurologists and geriatricians are my favorite kinds of people. Geriatricians are the opposite of a pediatrician. They take care of those of us over 65. They will know a lot about this subject by nature of they have to, due to the age of their practices. Neurologists are the big brain men and women who are going to get this figured out for the rest of us. And there's a diagnostic clinic, for instance, at the Anschutz Rocky Mountain Alzheimer's Research Center, full of neurologists to help figure it out. I'm going to go through these next slides very quickly. And by the way, I should tell you that you guys can have these slides. I'll just send them to you.
That'd be great.
Or to Anna. And if you guys want them, just I'm sure they have your emails already. Just let us know and we'll send them out your way. So you don't have to copy down everything. The next 2 or 3 slides are very busy. Here's how the doctor visit. Here's what you have to do. The main takeaway, I'll let you guys read that for yourself while I'm talking, but the main takeaway here is we have to be involved. Our people are poor medical historians. The stuff that would come out of Dad's mouth at the doctor's office was nothing to do with what was going on with him recently, right? So I had to be there at every appointment to sort things out. You want to bring a list of all the current medication and don't leave a thing out. And while I'm on that subject, it always slays me when I hear people go, you know, I saw something on TV the other day, sounded really good, I'm going to start taking that. Please, please, and I'm not talking about any particular substance at this point, I'm just in general. I took some kind of an oil a few years ago, and my family has high cholesterol. My cholesterol went up 30 points. And my doctor said, okay, let me just get this straight. What part of you don't digest any sort of medication over the counter or not without my telling you that that's okay? Do you not understand? I got quite a little scolding. So be sure you check with your doctor before you take anything that sounds good, okay? Here's what the assessment looks like, and again, that's a busy slide. The middle part looks a lot like your annual wellness visit, your physical that you all have, and it is. There's a mental and psychiatric evaluation tacked onto that along with family interviews. And one of the ways, well, I'll tell you, I think the next slide will explain this in a minute, but a geriatrician or a neurologist can get to a 90 to 95% clinically accurate diagnosis without expensive testing. And that's by ruling other things out. So they're going to go, wow, I can see a brain tumor on an MRI or a stroke. I can't see Alzheimer's on an MRI until way later when shrinkage has occurred. By then you probably have it figured out, right? Is there hallucination involved? Well, then it might be in this family. And so it's sort of like what you're left with is Alzheimer's disease. But here's the big deal, you guys. This slide is really important. So many breakthroughs in the last 5 years on diagnosis. PET scans have been around forever, right, everybody? But a genius about 4 years ago invented a radioactive dye that can now be injected into the living brain. No longer do we have to wait definitively to an autopsy to say this person had Alzheimer's disease. We can now see the buildup of amyloid beta and tau in living brains. Doesn't mean you're necessarily going to develop full-blown dementia later, but we can see that you have the pathology of the disease. And by the way, it's never too young to be thinking about this because we have seen a beginning of a buildup of amyloid beta and tau in 30-year-old brains. So everybody needs to be paying attention to this. Cerebral spinal fluid, that's a spinal tap, is another way to find out definitively. That's not a lot of fun. And then you guys were looking for biomarkers. So cholesterol is to cardiovascular disease as blank is to Alzheimer's. We know of one already, and those are the blood vessels behind the eye. The retina is part of the brain, not the eyeball. And some ophthalmologists are now becoming very proficient in taking pictures and looking, not your common run-of-the-mill ophthalmologist, but some specialists are now looking at this to see of the health of the brain through the eyeball, blood vessels behind the eyeballs. And 82% of us, down at the bottom here, over 65, believe that we should have our cognition tested every single year as part of our annual wellness visit. 16% of us are getting it done. The doctor may not offer it just to save time, to be totally honest with you, and if you don't know about it, you may not ask for it. It's part of your annual wellness visit. So I suggest to everybody just start having that tested, and then you'll have a good baseline that you can go by as you go through. When a diagnosis of any type of dementia comes across, I can tell you from personal experience that emotions run very high. If I could split this screen, there'd be one for me and one for my lovies. We're all feeling pretty much the same thing in the earliest stages of these diagnoses. Lots of worry, the uncertainty of all this is really tough, because if you've met one person with Alzheimer's disease, you've met exactly one person with Alzheimer's disease. Doctors tell me that if you see pancreatic cancer stage 4 under a slide on a scope, you go, yep, that's what that is, all right. But this is a little tougher to get to, and everybody's different, so it affects different parts of the brain for different people. The one, I'll let you read all those for yourself, but the one I want to point out is denial. It's the bane of our existence in my field of work. We cognitive thinkers can be in denial for the entire journey. I highly recommend against it. Because it will take care of itself eventually, because undeniable stuff is going to start happening in the family. Our lovies can only be in denial in the earliest stages of any type of dementia, because denial is a cognitive thought. And once they kind of get to a point where they're confused enough not to be able to think cognitively, they're not in denial, they're just living their own reality. So the stuff that they tell us is real to them in their minds. And unless there's safety involved, we go with the flow. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Here are the 10 warning signs. Now, before we go through these, I'm going to go through them pretty fast and give you an example from my family in each case. But here's the deal, you guys. Don't leave today being the worried well. I know what you're going to do. You're going to go, I've done that, and I've done that, and I've done that. Of course you have, okay? So pay attention to the frequency with which these things happen. Here we go. Memory changes that disrupt life. I will tell you, we went to, all of our family were over in Kansas before we brought them all over here to care for them. We walked into Elsie's kitchen one day. There were Post-it notes on every canister, drawer, and cabinet in the kitchen. And this is a woman who knew her way around the kitchen. Number 2 is challenges in planning and problem solving. I'll use my sweet Elsie again. You guys know what ambrosia salad is? I think it has marshmallows, pineapple, and coconut. Am I on the right track? Yeah. There were cherry tomatoes in the ambrosia salad one Sunday dinner. By the way, that's nasty. Don't try that at home, okay? So, it's bad already. Oh, yeah, thanks. Thank you for adding that. Anyway, and so we knew something was up with her skills. Difficulty completing familiar tasks. I was giving this talk at a company a couple of weeks ago, and a gentleman said his dad has been playing a game of pickup b-ball at the Wash Park Rec Center every Saturday morning for the last 20 years. He called his son and said, "Son, I can't find the rec center this morning." So that was his really first clue. Confusion with time or place. I went to pick up Dad, take him to a doctor's appointment. It was July, pushing 100 degrees. He was in his heavy coat and boots waiting for me when I got there, not knowing what season it was. Number 5, visual and spatial difficulties. We already showed the peripheral vision issues. Our people just don't see the way we see. Dad was not a vegetable dude. If we presented him with a dinner plate with fettuccine alfredo, mashed potatoes, a dinner roll, and green beans, he would only eat the green beans. He didn't see the rest of the stuff. So we had dark-colored plates for light-colored food, light-colored plates for dark-colored food to help him enjoy his menu a little bit better. Problems with words. Anybody ever gone, what's the word, what's the word? Yep, you'll do that again. But what we do is we just grasp another word from our vast vocabulary, drag it down, and carry on. Our people won't be able to pick up the pieces like that, or if they lose their train of thought, they won't be able to get it back like we will. And next is misplacing things. Anybody ever lost anything in there? And you will again, you will again. But if you find the keys you're looking for in the jacket you wore yesterday, that's okay, relax. If you find them in the freezer, might be a cause for concern because that's not where keys live. You get it. Decreased or poor judgment. Anybody ever made a poor decision in the room today? That would be an interesting lunch and learn. Wouldn't have passed the mic around on that one. Don't start with me. I've made some doozies. Telemarketers, bane of our existence. You know that elder fraud and abuse is really rampant in our society. Always on the lookout for that as a mandatory reporter in my case. But it's not always sinister, everybody. Elsie loved pink. And she would see a sweater she loved in a catalog and order it. 11 more would show up. She had forgotten that she had ordered them, so I was sending them back as fast as they were coming until we got a handle on that. Withdrawal from work or social activities. This is an interesting one. I was giving this at a really large company the other day and downtown. That's all I'll say to protect this gentleman. Anyway, you would recognize the name of the company in about a minute. But he asked after the lunch and learn, he said, "Could I have a word with you privately? I'm in trouble. I was an hour and a half late to work this morning because I didn't recognize the plaza out in front of my building. And I think my boss is starting to catch on." So by the way, that gentleman is getting all the help he can possibly get from the Alzheimer's Association. Don't get hung up on their title either. They deal with all kinds of dementia, not just Alzheimer's. And at Dementia Friendly Denver, we think of ourselves as troubadours. So I'm out doing this 1 hour free presentation all over the place. You may never see me again, but we want to make sure before we part ways today that you know how to get the ongoing care and support that you're going to need from the not-for-profits in this guide that I put at each one of your chairs today, so that you can get the ongoing support that you need. These people will help you every step of the way. And then the last one, I can't look at this slide even after 5 years, you guys, so I'll let you read it for yourself up there. But this is unacceptable, that our loveys have to go through this. That's why we got to get this fixed, and we shall. So, and by the way, change in mood and personality. We're not talking about, you kids get off my lawn kind of stuff. You know, we're talking about serious departures from baseline mood and personality, and it's tragic. So that's the reason I get up and work on this thing every day. Let's get off of that slide for my sake, if you don't mind. And then, what do you do if you see any of those 10 signs? You absolutely have to talk about it, compare notes with family members, hopefully in a civil manner. This doesn't bring out the best in families sometimes. I've taught classes where I had to separate the siblings, on two sides of the room, kind of thing. And I'm always blown away when people think there's going to be some giant pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, who's going to get the vast estate. And I always say, you're going to be lucky if you don't have to dip into your own pocket before this whole thing is over. So it's it's the most expensive disease on the planet. So care and planning is really important in that direction. But at any rate, and you have to get a doctor's appointment. Remember the B12? Ta-da! Remember the brain tumor? Uh-oh, got to go find out what's going on. Here's a quick caregiver overview. There are over 16 million of us taking care of those people. That's underreported as well. Here are the Colorado numbers you can see for yourself. We put in 18.5 billion hours of unpaid care a year. And because I ran IBM for a decade or two, I'm always tuned into money, the value of money. That's $234 billion a year. You guys, that's half the Walmart's annual revenue. I mean, we are an industry in and of ourselves as unpaid caregivers. 74% of us report being concerned about our own health, which throws us into the healthcare system. I don't think I'm the dumbest woman you guys will ever meet, but I went for 3 years one time during the height of my 16 years with 3 people with Alzheimer's, not going to my own doctor or dentist. I was in so many doctor's offices, it seemed like it should count. Well, it wasn't my doctor, you know what I mean? But you get it. And then self-care, respite, very, very important, and the people in the resource guide can help you figure that out as well. Here's the little unexpected career we launch into. The top part, I call it a 36-hour day. This is just what it takes to run a household, all the stuff you got to do. Ladies, some of you may relate to the old adage of eating for 2 during a pregnancy, and I thought of myself as thinking for 4 on a daily basis, me and my 3 lovies. And then down at the bottom, particular interest to this group today because of where we are. This is the serious stuff that keeps us afloat or not. So we find ourselves becoming junior doctors and nurses and social workers and accountants and financial planners, and all of this stuff, and you need help. So reach out, obviously. That's a message for everyone, particularly because of where we are today. Understanding dementia behaviors, no problem. When that happens, normally if my back weren't out today, I would dance, but I can't dance. Oh, I can try. That hurt. Okay, not going to do that. No worries. We have no rules. Don't worry about it. Here are the behaviors that we have to learn to deal with, and we've already talked about some of these, you guys, but I want to call your attention to repetitive questioning. 100% of people with any kind of dementia are going to ask you the same questions over and over, or tell you the same stories over and over again. And you probably figured it out if you're involved in this already, but if not, I'm about to crack the code for you. Are you ready? Answer the question cheerfully. They are asking it of you for the very first time in their minds. It takes less energy, less facial muscles, less of everything to just say, "It's Tuesday, Dad. It's Tuesday, honey." Then to go, "It's Tuesday." Whose blood pressure just went up? Mine, right? So we want to just be gentle with these people. They have a brain disease. Let's face it. We've talked about agitation and anxiety. Shadowing is when they stick like glue to us. They know they're very dependent on us. That requires respite care for us, because that can be really maddening to have somebody right there with you all the time. Sundowning is a real thing, you guys. Happens between 3 and 7 in the afternoon. There are biorhythms involved. Some of it is easy to explain because shadows can dance on the wall and be so much menacing. So we want to take everything down a notch in the afternoon. All of the appointments that you have with your lovies, with financial planners and wealth managers and all that, you want to pick the sweet spot in the morning. Not too early, because our people don't just jump right up in the morning either, but the coveted 10 to 10:30, 11 to 11:30 appointments. Nothing good is really going to happen past 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Our people get very fatigued, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Sleeplessness, and tearfulness, by the way, they're in there, you guys. Our lovies are in there. They hate it when we talk about them like they're not there. And their feelings can get hurt very easily. I've had people go, I snapped at my dad today. I was horrible. But it's okay because he won't even remember it 2 hours from now. And that's not the point. We can really injure them in the moment because that's where they live, in the moment. Sleeplessness, days become nights, nights become days. Suspicion and paranoia are part of the deal. So they're going to accuse you or others of taking money from a wallet. Well, the wallet may not have existed for the last 10 years, but we're going to go with the flow unless safety is involved. I always kept just a $20 bill wrinkled up kind of in my pocket, and if Dad said, "Did you take that 20 out of?" I just go, "There's one on the floor." I just toss it down and I go, "I bet this is it." We fix the problem. Pacing should always be reported to a physician. That's a sign of anxiety. Doctors can help with some relaxants about that, but fall risk is really high for our people. So that's a very fine line because we don't want to cause falls. And then wandering is the game changer. Capital G, capital C. Once a person has wandered, then we have to make sure that they're safe. So that's when secure dementia units come into play. Or you can also fortify their house or your house or whatever the living arrangement is. You got to be sure you can get out in a fire, that kind of thing. So that's when families kind of have to make a big decision. And I am the least judgmental person you guys will ever meet. No family does this quite the same. It's all going to be okay eventually, but get some help figuring it out along the way. And the equation is confusion equals discomfort, which equals behaviors. So limiting the confusion is our goal. Here are some quick tips. Short sentences, basic words. Less is more. We never speak baby talk to our people. They're adults. We answer their questions cheerfully. On the other hand, we try not to ask them questions, and this is the hardest one because we just ask questions all day long. But when we do that, our voices go up on the end, and it kind of signals that it's your turn to say something, and our people may not be tracking. So they get really tense. Dad's shoulders would kind of tense up when he knew that something was expected of him. We pay attention to our tone. We allow plenty of time. We're living on dementia time, so plenty of time to go places and do things. Limit distractions, particularly in the bathroom and the kitchen. We have chores to do and meals to ingest. So I took down pictures and knickknacks and things like that so there wouldn't be any distractions. We focus on feelings, not facts. Our dad said to me one time, honey, this time last week your mother and I were in Paris. And I said, Paris is a lovely city, and we left it at that. I think you guys get it. We never criticize, we never challenge, we never correct, we never argue. These are people with a brain disease. Not to mention, you will never win an argument with a person with any type of dementia. It's not possible because arguing is a cognitive thought. That's just not going to come down on anybody's side. And we redirect to more pleasant activities when upsets occur. We can be perfect at our caregiving job, and upsets are going to occur. So hopefully we can keep that to a minimum. But patience, patience, patience is the name of the game. One interaction tip that I will give you, and that is this: 1 hour for us is 5 hours for them. So if you think you're doing your lovey a favor, Tim and I learned the hard way on this one for sure. It was a 4th of July picnic at a park. We were there for 2 hours. 2 times 5, my folks just went to a 10-hour 4th of July picnic. I'd be exhausted too, right? So they had meltdowns, needless to say. So anyway, it was pretty bad. We learned a lot that day. Here are all the resources that are in
That's in the guide, right?
Yes, that's all in the resource guide that we left for all of you today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go through the 12 real things. We're right on time. This doesn't take as long as you might think. And then you're going to pepper me with questions. Sound like a deal? Okay, a couple of things before we get into these 12 real things you can do to reduce your risk or delay your onset. The verbiage about this changed in March of 2018. It used to be the scientific and medical community would say, if you do these 12 things, it might possibly reduce your risk or delay your onset, and that changed to will probably. Now that may not seem like a big deal to you guys, but that's a really big deal. So these are for real, okay? And then the last thing I'll say, I hope you don't mind, but remember how I said at my age, if I have dementia, I have it as I'm standing before you today, sitting before you today. Let's say that I'm due to develop full-blown dementia at 85, and I could push that off to 90 or 95. I might not care because something else got me first, right? So that's my goal, obviously, to do that. And I will share with you my personal plan for demise as we lead into questions. I plan to expire, sheer exhaustion, on the dance floor in Argentina, doing the tango with a handsome octogenarian because I've always preferred younger men. I'm going to let you think on that one just for a second. I always go, bada boom, I'll be here all week. Not true, I'm leaving soon. Oh, that hurt to laugh, but it felt good. Okay, anyway, here we go. You ready? Number 1, regular cardiovascular exercise. Be sure you check with your doctor to make sure it's safe for your particular health before you start a regimen of exercise. Number 2, fuel up right, a diet high in fruits and vegetables and lean proteins. Avoid sugar and salt and fatty meats and fried foods. If you consume alcohol, do so in moderation only. And blueberries, blueberries, blueberries. We don't say at our house, have you had your blueberries today? We say, have you taken your blueberries today? Antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, good for the brain in every way. Follow your heart. If it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. 25% of every heartbeat shoots oxygen directly to our brains. So there's a direct correlation between cardiovascular disease and cognitive decline, between hypertension and high blood pressure and cognitive decline, between diabetes and obesity and cognitive decline. So we have to take care of ourselves. Next one, talk to your doctor. That's what I meant about every year. When you say you start asking me about my cognitive health past 50 or 60 or whatever you decide on, because what if you're a denier and you don't want to bring it up every year? You really have to have it checked. Mind your mental health. Be sure, you guys, that you treat depression. It's typically a treatable condition, and manage your stress. Yoga, meditation. Anybody discovered grown-up coloring books yet? I love them. Oh my gosh, it calms me right down. Yeah. And then butt out. There is a direct correlation between smoking and Alzheimer's disease. Enough said. Number 7, hit the books. You guys got to keep learning something. Take classes at a community college or online. Learn a language or a musical instrument for the first time, no matter how old you are. Number 8 has a little controversy around it because there's not science behind every brain game you play. I do them all, by the way. They're fun. What the difference? But the ones that test your peripheral vision, do those first. I sat through a 2-hour plenary session one time on how much science there is behind that. Something like a double-digit less Alzheimer's, 20-25% less Alzheimer's in people who did the peripheral vision games on a regular basis. Then I say, if you can't find a brain game you like, go out to IKEA and buy a wall unit. Try to put the thing together with less than 5 things left over at the end, you know. Okay, thank you for laughing.
I'm going to give it back in the box.
Good one, that's good. All right, you guys, the next one is buddy up. We have to socialize in this day of social media. We have to get out from behind our phones and talk to one another and interact, volunteer, take a dancing lessons, whatever. And then this is the last one, so get your questions ready, but listen up. This one is unbelievable. There is about a 25% increase in the incidence of Alzheimer's in untreated hearing loss during middle age. And I don't even know what middle age is anymore, so I say 50 to 75, right? Your brain cannot process what you never heard to begin with. You are very detached and missing out on a bunch of stuff that you don't even know about. So this one, there should be no stigma about a hearing device at all. When we found out about this, you went out the next day, right? Absolutely, the next day. And by the way, it changed my life for toward the happy month. Yep. Anyway, number 11, catch some Z's. You got to sleep. Remember we talked about the amyloid beta and tau dissolves naturally? This is natural sleep, you guys. There are sleep medications that will actually increase your risk for Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. This is new news as of about 6 months ago. So before you go down that path, talk to your doctor about that. Put your devices in another room, make it cool and dark, and give yourself the very best shot of getting a good, solid, natural night's sleep. And then the last one, we live in Colorado, we're sliding down or around something summer and winter, right? So helmets, 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 seatbelts, seatbelts, seatbelts. We have to protect our brains. The last thing you ever want to do is go over to a wall and bang your head against it. So if you think you're going to have a tough day at work, throw a helmet on to begin with, I would. And that's it, you guys. So what questions do you have for me today? Oh, thank you very much. That was very kind. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I would stand up and take a bow, but that would be so painful that I would not be able to get back up. Anyway, I hope that didn't show that I was in pain. I'm doing fine. I told you I'm having back problems, so that's why I'm sitting down. All right, what do you got for me? Anybody got any questions? We're right on time, I think, but we can take a few, can't we?
Yeah.
Sure. Yes.
Well, you mentioned peripheral vision.
Yes.
So, with glaucoma, is there any relationship?
You know, like I say, I forgot to go to medical school, so I know glaucoma, so I don't want to get over my skis on that one. So I honestly don't know, but peripheral vision can be tested at the doctor's office as well. And I will tell you this quick story. I was sitting in an occipital dementia seminar one time. It was 6 hours long, longest 6 hours of my life, because I didn't understand more than about every 2 or 3 words, a bunch of science. But anyway, this gentleman was in a rental car on LBJ Freeway driving from Dallas to Fort Worth, early 60s, on a business trip. And there was a Conway freight truck in front of him. He'd been following it for miles, no exits. And all of a sudden the truck isn't in front of him anymore. And he knows it hasn't pulled over. So he's thinking, that's kind of weird. The trip went okay. Do you need to go? Yeah, bye. See ya. Thanks for coming. He thought that was kind of weird. The trip went okay. When he got home, a couple of days later, he walked into the kitchen and he said to his wife, what did you do with the refrigerator? And she goes, dude, it's right here. He could feel it, but he could not see the refrigerator. And this temporary blindness that came and went in his case, in his particular case, was the earliest sign of Alzheimer's disease for him. So what we're trying to teach ophthalmologists and all of those kinds of providers is, hey, go to the eye doctor and find out if it's a vision problem. But if it's not, then take it another step forward because it might be something to do with your brain. Any other questions?
What is the name of the neurologist I just said?
Oh, Dr. Huntington Potter. Yes, Dr. Hunt Potter. He runs the Alzheimer's, Rocky Mountain Alzheimer's Research Center over at Anschutz. Yes?
You know, is there any correlation between oral health and
Oh, that's such a good one. Yes, gum disease. And again, I did read a paper on it the other day, but I just read the paper pretty fast, so I'm not going to talk too much to it. But you're on the right track. Gum disease obviously can cause all kinds of problems, and as can dental issues. You know, sometimes.
Right there in your head.
Exactly. And so Tim's dad was having dental problems, and it's like you're tempted to kind of go, oh, we're not going to fix that. We're not going to fix that. And it's like an abscess. A tooth can certainly go right to the brain and with an infection. So good gum health is a wonderful thing. So yes, to the degree that I can answer that. Yes, go. That's okay. Listen, we're right at the hour. Yeah.
What about sugar? Is there a correlation?
Yeah, sugar is like brain poison. It should be an occasional treat. You know what I mean? It's just not great. So we should avoid that, unfortunately. Sure tastes good though, doesn't it? So that's all right. You know what I always say? I say it's an occasional treat, and this is the occasion. So don't worry about it too much. But yeah, if you really have a sweet tooth, you might want to peel back on that a little bit. Anybody else? Yes.
We ran into a situation with Mark's mom this summer, and my mom's deceased, but her too. Both of our dads have been deceased for a long time. And then all of a sudden for Mark's mom, she started saying, well, I don't know where your dad is.
Oh, yeah.
He hasn't come home. So the nurse at her care facility said, just get her distracted, saying, oh, he's out bowling or this
Yeah.
and that. The other sister-in-law is just like, we're not going to have any of this nonsense.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's dead.
Oh, dear. Okay, well, yeah, my take on it is
Situation.
I'm a huge proponent of fiblets. Fiblets. I think I made up the word. I'm not sure. I'll take credit for it anyway. Thank you. These are just small untruths. Nobody's going to Hades over any of this, right? We're just trying to not upset our people. So, I mean, really, would you want to be told every day of your life that the person you love the most is dead? I mean, you know, so I agree with the first camp, not the second camp, right? So we just, and then, like I say, distract them, go do something pleasant, and the moment will pass in many cases. In many cases. Yeah.
In your experience, have you seen people with Alzheimer's do better in their own homes
Yeah,
or in?
I will say in a familiar environment. Yes. So the way I put it now is you'll hear people say, well, we want to keep people at home for as long as possible. And I say we want to keep people at home for as long as it makes sense. When the primary caregiver is a spouse and that person's health is beginning to deteriorate, you know, I've seen it all. I mean, then that's no longer makes sense to me. And so, like I say, residential care communities, there are fabulous ones. And some people do better with round-the-clock care at home. Others just more than one way to do it, but familiar. What you don't want to do, the ones I don't like, are when somebody goes, oh, there are 4 kids, we're each, mom's going to live with each of us for 3 months out of the year. And no, that's really bad. Get them someplace and keep them there as long as possible. You'll have to move sometimes a couple of times during the journey. For whatever reason, some place gets bought and they don't take, if you're on, happen to be on Medicaid or something, they don't take it anymore. You gotta go with the flow to some degree, but you don't want to just be a revolving door. Yes, sir.
So you said 16% had their memory checked.
Yes.
What do they check?
Oh, wonderful question. Different states and different doctors will use a different test. And I believe here in Colorado we're using the SLUMS now, SLUMS test. There's one called MOCA, and there was a mini-cog and a mini-mental. Nobody's using the mini-mental anymore. That's because the 3 words in the mini-mental were ball, tree, flag. Anybody with me on this one? And people were memorizing ball, tree, flag. It's like, okay, say these 3 words. I don't even have to tell, you don't have to tell me what they are, ball, tree, flag. So now it's banana, sunrise, chariot. But anyway, you can memorize that too. But the point is they switch it up every once in a while. I think we use one called SLUMS. And
So
what it's going to
mean a thing to me.
doesn't mean a thing. Sorry, let me tell you what it's going to say. What's today's date?
Okay.
If you're in a building, what floor are we on? A doctor's office. What? Tim, help me out. There's a picture of some kind, like a diagram, and you have to draw it. It's pretty simple.
Time on a clock.
Yeah, time on a clock, right? And
Like draw the hands.
draw the hands and make it 5 after 11 or something like that.
What state are you in? Or
What state are you in? Who's the president? You know, things like that. There are typically about 30 questions, and these are not things that we administer at home, ladies and gentlemen. This is the doctor only. Remember how we're not supposed to ask a person questions? Well, this is a question answering thing, and the doctors know how to do it in a non-stressful way. So, but it's a good thing to do because then you have a baseline. And I think when John and Elsie were first there, they were like 27s out of 30, and then as their 16 years passed, I mean, they were down below 11 at one point in time, you know, so the doctor could really see how many points they'd lost in a 6 or 8 month period. Great question. And he'll tell you what he wants to administer. You don't get to ask for a certain one that it's not like the driver's license test where you can study ahead of time.
And they don't all do a great job of it. I just have my physical, and my doctor just said, so how's your memory? I said, well, it's great. Good.
Good, you're good to go.
Like, well,
Yeah, we'd like to be slightly more scientific than that.
And he's a geriatric
Yeah,
doctor.
yeah. Anybody else? I don't want to keep you, yes,
So
sir.
at the beginning of the 16 years, did you change a lot of these factors that these 12 things?
No,
Diet.
oh man, no, we didn't, because these 12 things are pretty new. They're within the last 5 years. So we wouldn't have even known about that back in the day. I mean, there were some that we knew, like smoking and stuff like that was not a good idea. But a lot of this has just come up in the last 5 years. So I wish we had done that.
And in truth, my parents did a lot of the things already.
Yes, they were
So,
healthy.
I mean, it's like it will help you, but it's not going to cure you, or it's like.
And when I think back on it, you and I were about at our healthiest during our 40s. You know, we were gym rats, and you know, so that may help us later on too. But anyway, but it's never too soon to late to start. That's the main thing.
Right.
And with that, Chad, do you want to?
Well, great. Yeah, let's give one more round
Oh,
of
thank
applause
you.
for JJ.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for toughing
Yes.
it out today. And that was great information. I understand we may have these slides available, so if anybody
Yes, of course.
Would like
Yeah.
their advisor to follow up and provide that information, just let us know. Our next event is